week 6 of October. I hope you guys doing well. I think I'm doing okay. I'm not panicking yet. Maybe I should be. So week 6, it is finding, scheduling and managing your time. So you know, like a lot of other people, I work full-time. Why do I never think of taking my shoes before I start filming? Mystery. But yeah, I work full-time every week. Fortunately, I do have the weekends off, so I at least have that time completely to myself. I am fortunate in that way. I work from 8 to 5 every single weekday, so that's a bit long thinking about it. That does mean that I still have the option of maybe I wake up at 6 in the morning. Very unlikely. Very unlikely. I am not a 6 in the morning type of person. More likely I am just gonna stick to my current routine and get home after 5, do the things that need to be done, and then settle down. And maybe not watch as much YouTube, or at least to have it in the background. Maybe use it as a treat, like when you're done writing X amount of words, you're allowed to watch single video by this person, and then you need to finish. Maybe that will work, considering how much I absolutely adore YouTube and all the content creators on there, all the various things. That might work for me. Again, this week I am very fortunate with the my time, because my time is my time. So the only thing is just sitting my butt down and writing. So we start proper in November. Like, we aren't, according to the rules, we don't start any writing until midnight November the 1st. Just because we can't write the story proper doesn't mean that we can't like work on the world and the plotting. Plotting beforehand is probably a good idea if we're gonna do the thing that we're going to do. So the thing that I decided to do is I bought a notebook, and the thing, I haven't really started, like the pages are all empty as of yet, but I have found some of the things that I've doodled, like the rough draft of the world. I've made like sketches of the things that I need to keep in mind, like what is the money system that they have, what kind of money do they have, what do they have, bartering, do they have exchange, do they have, you know, what do they value, what is it that they think is worth an X amount of this thing, that kind of thing. What foods do they eat, what do they drink, what is cultural, what is belongs to this culture and that culture, you know, all those things. And one of the things that I've started with is like, did a sketch of one of the characters. I also wondered about, like, because I have one of the pillars of the story is a story concerning the royal family. They do play a part of the story of my pirates. I started thinking about, well, what would the heraldry be? Like, what is the king's heraldry, and how can I use that to reflect on the events of the story and why the story is happening? Because that king, you guys, that king, don't like him. So this is gonna be kind of like my logbook, my Bible, my side notebook for everything that I do decide and discover about this world, like the money system, what kind of plants they have, what kind of animals, what is safe to eat, what is decidedly not safe to eat, how does that, you know, possibly play into the story and what happens. So another thing I want to get done before November begins is I want to remake my preliminary sketch of the world and remake it in Incarnate. So I can, as I said last week, I can have the map of my world as background, like on my computer, and you know, have a visual setting in front of me. I do figure it would also be a good idea to just take time to decide on, like, at least find inspiration for like the environment and the people and the cuisine and all that. So that will help me just write. Also, the thing that I need to keep in mind is that this is not a final product. This is a first draft. This is my exploration into this world. It's allowed to be bad. It's allowed to not be perfect. The point is simply to write. So another thing that I also decided would help me to decide the plot and the story before I start is to basically make like a bunch. Well, I literally haven't done anything with it, but I have a bunch of these printer paper. And the thing that I did is that I folded them like this, and I'm going to be cut them into, you know, these parts. I'm explaining so well. So basically what I'm going to be having is a lot of little notes, and I'm going to be writing the scenes on them. I'm going to be doing that thing of writing the scenes on a piece of paper and then probably on the floor. Probably that's the most space that I do have, and arrange them in the flow of the story as I think it's gonna go. And because I'm gonna do it like this, like a bit like a puzzle, bit like a game, I think that's gonna work really well with the way that my brain works. So, but yeah, as for the little side project that I've been having fun with since I think September, that is well, it's two things. It's the self-imposed challenge of writing 4 short stories in October. I have managed to write 2, but it does occur to me that both of them are like not really stories. They're more like chain of thinking, a chain of thoughts. So thinking and feeling and all that. Doesn't really have characters, so I do want to write a proper short story. That's something I need to work on. Like, I keep just going. The other thing is the 300 prompt challenge that I put myself, of writing collectively 300 prompts in a file and maybe do something with it. I don't know. It's a first draft and I am actually doing ridiculously well. I'm actually really proud of myself. I have the categories of fantasy, sci-fi, it's romance, mystery, horror, and general. I did not make a separate category for like humor or anything because humor is tricky and you... Listen, if you probably have read stories where the point was where the author definitely set out to write a funny, humorous story, but they took themselves maybe not too seriously, but like it didn't come across very well. So humor is a difficult subject because if you set out to be funny, you're probably not going to be funny. So I remember one story that I read like years and years ago. I can't even remember the story. I can't remember the name of the story. I cannot remember the name of the author. I just remember thinking that it was rather painful getting through the book because I was stubborn. I did finish it, but oh boy. So it set out to be funny. It set out to be humorous and get you to laugh constantly. But the problem with that is that it got really boring. And some of the things that you were obviously supposed to laugh at, they just weren't funny because they tried too hard to be funny. It was a fantasy story. I do believe that the main character, I'm not sure if he was a teenager or a young adult, but he did feel rather young. So he somehow falls into a fantasy story and it's, you know, it's all supposed to be funny. Which it could have been, but it was... story is so full of just slapstick, and that might actually work in like short story or in a movie. In a full-out novel, it was a bit painful to try and slot through, but I was determined to finish reading it. So there are two scenes that actually do stand out in my memory with this book. One is where our main character is at a market and he somehow accidentally buys either a dragon egg or some kind of a lizard. I'm not entirely certain, but he somehow accidentally buys this thing that apparently he's not really supposed to, but because of reasons, but there's not really consequences to it. Like, I don't remember it, but I just remember that the market scene was a little bit like I don't know. And the other thing is the ending or the main villain or antagonist of the story, because of course there's an antagonist, but he doesn't really do much in the story itself. Like, there isn't much of this person's presence. So I told you that the story was supposed to be funny. Like, I do remember, I can't remember what the blurb out the back said exactly, but it was all like, ooh, you're gonna laugh, it's gonna be so funny. The main antagonist starts out like this kind of elderly, kind of funny old uncle type of dealio. Like, you get the feeling that he's like just an old guy who is kind of not the best person, but because he's the antagonist of the story and all that, la la la, the story does a 180 up just at the spot, and so suddenly you just like, did I step into another story? Because you have a young main character with whom you've been suffering with slapstick. There's a mentor type who I can't really remember anything was about. And then you have this antagonist, and first when they meet, they first meet the antagonist at the end of the story, because that's the kind of story this is. And it starts out kind of like an awkward family reunion, and then suddenly the main villain just goes, he's, I don't even know how to put this. He insinuates something about either his mother or his sister, and it goes really, really dark like that. He insinuates something potentially incestuous, potentially necrophilia. Just so completely unexpected, and then it just kind of ends. Like, that's the only thing I remember with the story, is that silly kind of daft market scene, and then the villain just doing that 100% 180 on the entire feeling of the story. So that is one thing that we will need to watch out for, is when we are writing our story, that we like theme, maybe not worry too much about it. This is the first draft, we can always either rediscover our theme or figure out that we have a theme, or whatever. The tone of the story, like, this was a published novel. I can't remember anything about the story, and I kind of don't want to Google it because I don't really care for it. But this has left an everlasting mark on me. Let's try our best to keep the tone of the story consistent. If we are writing a nice soft story, let's keep it nice and soft. Let's not do a sudden 180 from a story about let's say we're writing about a young character who suddenly enters into another world and everything is just kind of like slapsticky. Maybe a touch of Terry Pratchett would be nice. So everything is maybe slapsticky. Let's not end the story with a villain who suddenly goes talking about really, really dark themes, and then just goes off and does his own thing, and you're supposed to just still be in the mind space of it being a humorous, slapsticky story. Let's just keep the tone consistent. Because otherwise you will leave readers scarred for life. So yeah, that's my rant of this week. But yeah, so in Preptober, this is the 6th and final week of Prep 101 for NaNoWriMo. Finding, scheduling and managing our time. I mean, that's a work in itself. Like, we need the time to do the things that we need to do. Like, this is going to be absolutely time consuming in November. We are going to be sitting up at down and write 50,000 words. That takes time. The one thing that I will not give up in November, this is actually my second channel. My main channel is where I talk about yarn, about knitting, crocheting, all that fun stuff. So I still have that channel too. And I don't want that one to go dormant in November. I do still want to do my best to keep it up over there. And keep this. I don't know what I'm going to do with this channel in November, because actually, yes, I do want to like make a kind of want to keep myself accountable, not just on the Nano webpage, but also on this channel. So like come up here and say like still alive. But the thing is that mention my other channel is because I do knit and crochet, so that is something that keeps me kind of sane. However, we just recently got back our knit nights in the town where I live. Knit nights is where we meet at the local, like, it's a small coffee shop with yarn. So they sell yarn and coffee, yeah. And real recently we got to get our knit nights back together, where we meet up and either knit or crochet for like 2 or 3 hours, one night a week. And I am not giving that one up, because the other thing that we need to keep in mind and stay, keep focusing on is our mental health. If we don't watch out for, not going absolutely insane in November, we will suffer from it. And the thing that I know that will be beneficial for me in November is keeping up with going to knit nights, because that is my mental health check. It keeps me sane and balanced. It's been back on now for like 2 weeks, and I immediately feel such a change in my mental stability. Kind of funny, but if you have something like that, I can't say that you should give it up in November. Like, I know that we need all the time that we can to reach our goal, but we can't do that and, sacrifice our mental health. That's just not an option. So that's one thing that we need to keep in mind when finding, managing and scheduling our time in November. Keep a mental check. Whatever it is, you need to keep your mental health top priority. Then NaNoWriMo, then everything else. Mental health should always come first, okay? So I think that's enough for me this week. I will stay sane, damn it! So that's enough for me this week. I will see you next week, yattering on about something else. Okay, I'll see you. Bless, bless.